With over 20 movies and counting making up the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we've seen so many of our favorite superheroes on the big screen. From Captain America's superhuman strength to Captain Marvel's photon blasts, we've also seen plenty of incredible powers on display. But despite all of this, comic book fans are still waiting to see how some powers will be used in the MCU. Without further ado, here are some superpowers MCU characters have, but for some reason, never use. Believe it or not, Captain Marvel failed to show how strong Carol Danvers actually is, which is ridiculous considering how insanely overpowered she was in that movie. She destroyed a spaceship in one punch. She tumbled through it. She was just having a good old laugh and tumbled right through it. Some fans have a hard time believing that Thanos could even leave as much as a dent in Captain Marvel when they fight in Endgame, after seeing just how powerful she is. But there are some abilities she hasn't even used yet, like precognition, the ability to see into the future. And she doesn't even need a time stone to do it in the comics. Her ability to see glimpses of the future is strong enough to be called her seventh sense. Now, she clearly hasn't demonstrated this power in the MCU just yet. You know, because she didn't know what Thanos was up until Nick Fury used his intergalactic pager to contact her. But maybe we'll get to see this ability in the near future. After all, Captain Marvel was set 20 years before the events of Avengers Endgame, so there's a good chance she's mastered her abilities since then, and will become much more powerful than in her standalone movie. Only time will tell. And here at CBR, we're very impatient. Whether you like to call Tony Stark a billionaire, a philanthropist, a playboy, or a genius, you can't deny that Iron Man has a passion for technology. In the comics, Tony nearly died in a fight against one of his villains, Malin. In a last-ditch effort to survive, he injected his nervous system with modified techno-organic virus-like body restructuring machines that allowed him to rewrite his own biology. Does that sound confusing? Yeah, it does. But we'll just call it nanotech and not get into the specifics. Just like Hank Pym puts quantum in front of everything, Tony explains everything with nanotech. Anyways, these body restructuring machines allowed Stark to combine with his Iron Man armor to give him the gift of technopathy, which is pretty rad. Iron Man was now capable of communicating with and controlling every piece of technology in the world, which is incredible when you think about it. Thanks to this ability, he was able to communicate with satellites and wireless connections to increase the range of his power, making his technopathy one of the best powers he's ever had. Well, it's actually the only power he's ever had since he's just a regular old dude, but you get the picture. Captain America's origin story is probably one of the most well-known in comic book history. He was too weak to get into the army during wartime, which is really depressing, but he had such a good, virtuous heart. When he was injected with a super soldier serum that gave him superhuman strength, speed, and stamina, he still kept that good, virtuous heart, and became one of the Avengers' top tacticians. Even his ability to throw his vibranium shield and somehow have it returned to him is well known. But there's another ability that even the biggest comic book fans might not know is one of his most useful powers. Steve Rogers also has advanced eyesight, far beyond the regular 20/20 vision non-glasses wearing humans have. This trait allows him to process visual stimuli much faster than any other kind of information and decipher what's useful. While Iron Man had to use his advanced technology to help him understand Cap's fighting patterns and tactics in Captain America Civil War before mounting a counteroffensive, Steve's advanced eyesight would have allowed him to do all of that without any fancy tech. Just some run-of-the-mill super serum was used instead. Where can we get some of that? If you remember, in Infinity War, Thor and Groot had a hilarious exchange where Thor mentioned that he was able to understand the walking and talking tree's advanced vocabulary of "I am Groot." How was Thor able to understand Groot, you ask? Well, that's because he took Groot as an elective in school back in Asgard, which sadly doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, we really miss Asgard. Anyway, this just confirms that "I am Groot" could have plenty of different meanings, which we already knew, but at least we now know that the writing portion of the class was very easy. The funny thing is, in the comics, Thor wouldn't have needed to open up a textbook and study the Groot language at all to understand what Groot was saying. He has an ability called the All-Tongue, which allows him to instantly communicate with anyone in the universe, no matter what language they're actually speaking. Thor can use this ability to understand every language in the universe, and when he answers back, this power makes those he's speaking to hear Thor in their native tongue. It's like an instant Google translator. The MCU makes it seem like everybody speaks English, but that could actually just be the All-Tongue working its tonguey magic. We first met Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch, back in Avengers Age of Ultron, when she was manipulated by Ultron into thinking the Avengers were the bad guys. While working with Ultron, she used her abilities to mess with the Avengers' minds. That's not very nice, Wanda. Leave the Avengers alone. She caused Thor, Black Widow, Iron Man, and even Captain America to relive some of their worst memories and see their biggest fears come to life. But the way the Hulk reacted to her powers was the most interesting of them all. The Hulk is known for getting angry and smashing things. That's just what he does. But the Scarlet Witch made him so furious that he nearly destroyed an entire city and made everyone on Earth fear the not-so-jolly green giant. When the Hulk goes crazy, he usually puts all his anger towards one single person, like Loki. But an entire city? Scarlet Witch is one incredible psychic, that's for sure. In the comics, none of this could even happen because, you see, the Hulk is supposed to be capable of resisting mind control. Yeah, his rage is so strong that even the most powerful psychics in the universe can't tame him. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Hawkeye doesn't get much love. Everyone likes to bring up how he was absent for all of Infinity War when he could have helped our heroes. But he was spending time with his family, and there's nothing wrong with that. Even as a superhero, fans still give Hawkeye slack, saying that he's just a highly skilled archer and isn't a real superhero. But in the comics, Clint Barton is more than just proficient with a bow and arrow. Believe it or not, he's also an expert fencer and gymnast. Yes, you heard us, an expert fencer and gymnast. It's not all bows and arrows with Hawkeye, you know. While he doesn't have the superhuman strength, speed, or stamina of Captain America or Black Panther, he's still incredibly gifted in hand-to-hand combat and can hold his own against almost anybody. In the comics, Hawkeye was trained in fencing, acrobatics, and marksmanship by the aptly named criminals Trickshot and Swordsman. Later, he was taught tactics, martial arts, and combat skills by Cap. Now known as Ronin, we'll add swordsmanship as one of Clint Barton's skills as well. There's really no weapon Clint can't use. We're sure he's a beast with nunchucks as well, but we can't really confirm it. SpiderMan is still a relatively new addition to the MCU. Sony finally decided to play nice and allowed Spider-Man to make his first appearance in the MCU in Captain America Civil War in 2016, before getting his own standalone movie, Spider-Man Homecoming, a year later. When it comes to superpowers, though, not all of them are created equally. We're not surprised that none of the many Spider-Man movies have featured the web-slinger's ability to communicate with spiders. It isn't nearly as useful as Peter's Spidey sense, enhanced strength, and the ability to cling to walls and swing on webs. Those are awesome gifts. But when is talking to a spider going to come in handy? Ant-Man's connection with ants helped him a few times in the MCU, like when it made the government think Scott Lang was still home under house arrest, when he was actually out and about doing Ant-Man things. But we don't see how spiders will be quite as useful. Following Marvel Comics' The Other storyline, Spider-Man came out of a cocoon with extra powers, one of which was the ability to talk to spiders. Even in Doctor Strange number 390, the Sorcerer Supreme worked his magic to let Peter Parker talk to his spider friends. Black Panther was a box office sensation when it hit theaters last year, making over $1 billion worldwide, and his comics are still going strong. Recently, T'Challa became known as the King of the Deceased, which is quite the interesting title if we do say so ourselves. This new title granted him the power and knowledge of all past Black Panthers, and the ability to control the undead. Yep. Now the Black Panther is skilled in necromancy, being capable of reanimating fallen warriors and summoning spirits into the physical world. It's interesting that they decided to give a good guy powers that are typically given to bad guys, but hey, go Marvel for doing something different. We doubt the family-friendly folks at Marvel Studios will even allow the Black Panther to utilize this skill on the big screen, but it would certainly come in handy. So many Wakandan soldiers lost their lives as a result of Killmonger and T'Challa's battle, and don't even get us started on Thanos' Outrider army. The King of Wakanda could have just used his necromancy skills to bring them all back to life. An army that can't be defeated will always win the battle, unless it's against Thanos, that is. We already talked a little bit about Scarlet Witch's incredible mind control powers, but she has some other powers that haven't been seen in the MCU. Before she was dusted due to Thanos' finger snap of doom, she was one of the MCU's most powerful characters, despite not being remotely close to mastering them, which shows you just how strong she could potentially be. She has the ability to fly, control minds, and show people visions of their fears, which we talked about earlier in the video, as well as being able to shoot red energy at her foes. There's pretty much nothing nothing she can't do. And in the comics, she's even more powerful, her superhuman abilities being practically limitless. Comic book Wanda Maximoff can magically alter reality in a similar way to that of the Reality Stone, one of the 6 Thanos collected that helped turn Scarlet Witch to dust. In fact, just by uttering the famous "No More Mutants" line in the comics, she caused the number of mutants in the world to drop from millions to the hundreds. If only she had this ability in Infinity War, then she would have been able to eliminate Thanos' army with ease. If only. If only. When you think of Doctor Strange, you think of the Sorcerer Supreme, time travel, and the mystic arts in general. But it turns out that he doesn't solely have to rely on magic in battle. While Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange has never showed any hand-to-hand combat prowess because they're all zen in the MCU, Stephen Strange could hold his own in the comics without even using a single spell. Yeah, that's right. While he doesn't have superhuman strength, speed, and stamina, a fancy tech suit, or the ability to communicate with ants or spiders like other heroes, he has a different set of skills. Doctor Strange is skilled at judo, and he's able to wield a wide variety of weapons instead of just a cloak. These include swords and even axes. He's used the axe of Angurumus on many different occasions in the comics, and if you paid close attention during the Doctor Strange film, there was a short Easter egg where the Sorcerer Supreme tried to grab the axe to battle Caecilius, but his mystical cape led him towards a different weapon. Maybe we'll see Strange with an axe in hand sometime in the future, but for now, all we have to deal with is a tease. Doctor Strange's use of the Time Stone in Infinity War was upsetting to say the least. He was able to trap Dormammu in an inescapable time loop in a standalone movie, but barely did anything against Ebony Maw of Thanos' Black Order and the Mad Titan himself. It was very disappointing, and you know what else was disappointing? Vision. He was so weak in the film, getting taken out without doing much of anything. We knew he'd be a huge target on Thanos' quest for the Infinity Stone since, you know, the Mind Stone's in his freaking forehead. But we expected him to do at least a little bit more than just get it ripped out of his head by his girlfriend and then again by Thanos after he used the Time Stone. So far in the MCU, we haven't seen all of Vision's abilities. Not even close. Sure, we've seen Vision's ability to phase through solid objects being used as a defensive tactic to keep his enemies away, but that's about it. The attack could actually be used offensively because Vision could phase inside of foes and materialize himself. It's a crazy power, but one that he could have used against Thanos to keep him from snapping those fingers and causing the decimation. While he's typically known for just saying, "I am Groot," and being either an adult, a baby, or a teenager, Groot is one of the more interesting characters in the MCU. Between the Avengers, the Warriors of Wakanda, Rocket Raccoon, and Groot, the Battle of Wakanda had enough characters fighting in it to really captivate audiences. That being said, it would have been even more intense if Groot unleashed his true power from the comics. If he wanted to, he could have been able to use giant fighting trees like those in The Lord of the Rings. Yeah, giant fighting trees. After all, trees are living things. As you can tell, in the comics, Groot has the ability to control plant life, so he could have easily weaponized the environment of Wakanda to help fight Thanos' army of Outriders. His ability to expand his branches and use them to attack foes has been useful in quite a few films so far, but he hasn't even come close to reaching the full potential of his powers. It's possible that in the MCU, he has to grow to be an adult to access all of his skills, so up until then, we probably won't see him control plant life. The running meme leading up to Endgame has been that Ant-Man is going to shrink himself, crawl inside of Thanos' you-know-what, and expand into Giant Man, which would explode the Mad Titan into a million pieces. Well, that sounds absolutely gross, because it is. It's something that the pint-sized hero could actually do. We've seen him go small and big very quickly, even comparing sizes with Bill Foster. Well, Giant Man sizes, that is. Now, if Ant-Man decided to go through this in Endgame, it would have been one of the most gruesome deaths we've ever seen in the MCU, so we don't think that Ant-Man will use this to finish off any of his foes in the future. But it doesn't change the fact that he could. Even in the comics, Ant-Man hasn't ever used this skill to defeat his enemies because it's gross. Even if he uses a different entrance, it's still going to be gross when he expands himself, and we see someone just explode. His suit is going to need one heck of a good wash after that. After knowing where Ant-Man's suit went, we'd suggest getting a brandy new one. While Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, the White Wolf, or whatever you want to call him, is Steve Rogers' bestie, one of his other good friends is Sam Wilson, aka Falcon. In Captain America Civil War, we were introduced to Red Wing, the recon drone Falcon used to spy on his enemies during his missions. The MCU Red Wing is a high-tech prototype created by none other than Tony Stark, who you may know as Iron Man. But in the comics, Red Wing is an actual Falcon that Sam Wilson has a telepathic link with. Yeah, the comic books can definitely be cooler at times. As much as we love Stark's tech and all his genius inventions, we wouldn't have minded a badass Falcon instead. In the comics, Red Skull used the Cosmic Cube, which is known as the Tesseract in the MCU, to make a mental connection between Falcon and Red Wing. Falcon later revealed that he could use this link to see into the minds of other birds, giving him over 6 billion pairs of eyes in the United States alone. That's an incredible power that would turn Falcon into one heck of a super spy, but Marvel Studios must have thought it was too ridiculous for the MCU. Right at the beginning of Avengers Infinity War, we saw that Thanos and his Black Order had already found their way onto Thor's spacecraft and started wreaking havoc. Thor wasn't in good shape at this point after recently losing his dad, his homeland, and his weapon, so watching Thanos end his brother's life right in front of him didn't make things any easier for him. The Mad Titan took care of the Asgardians with ease, and that's when he tells us that he wants to restore balance to the universe by eliminating half of all living creatures, instead of doubling the universe's resources. That's some really smart thinking there, bud. Anyway, terrible decisions aside, some of the Asgardians did escape the ship unscathed, and Valkyrie was among them. According to co-director Joe Russo, Valkyrie noped on out of there as fast as she could in an escape pod. If she shares one of her comic book counterpart's abilities, then she should be fine. You see, the powerful female warrior has a hidden ability that allows her to heal her wounds and injuries much quicker than a normal person. This heightened healing factor allows her to get back into fighting shape in just a few short hours. Talk about impressive. And those are just some of the superpowers MCU characters have, but never use. Are there any powers we might have missed? Which ones would you like to see on the big screen? Let us know in the comments section below. And don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more MCU videos. Thanks for watching.